Welcome to our very first episode of FPL Kitchen. My name is John Garrigan. I'm the teen librarian here at the Framingham Public Library. All right, so for our very first episode, we are going to be making blueberry scones with a lemon icing. They are very, very tasty. So first up, we want to preheat the oven. If you're doing this at home, you'll be preheat it to 400 degrees. All right, next step, we need our dry ingredients. So what we need is 2 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour. We have our flour right here. And what you want to do, instead of just scooping the flour out, the best way to do it, take a spoon and spoon it into your cup. That stops it from clumping up and it from being way more flour than you actually need. Yes, I get flour everywhere. All right, there's 2 cups. We need another 1/4 cup, so just a little bit more. There we go. 2 1/4 cups of flour. We'll set that to the side. Let's see, what do we need now? 3 tablespoons of sugar. Let's get our tablespoon out. We take our sugar. 1, 2, and 3. Let's see, then a tablespoon of baking powder. Be sure you use baking powder, not baking soda. If you use baking soda, it'll taste pretty weird. There we go. And a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. There we go. Quarter teaspoon of salt. Now, what we want to do is we want to put the butter in. And what you want to do is you want to have frozen butter. If you use regular room temperature or refrigerated butter, they won't rise, they won't get nice and flaky when you do it. So you want frozen butter, and the best way to do it, you can either cut it up into little chunks, or you can use a cheese grater. That's what I'm using. I have this fancy brick one. If you just have a regular little handheld cheese grater, that works perfectly. And you want, 6 tablespoons of butter. So one stick of butter is 8 tablespoons, so you want almost all of it, not quite. Let's see. Don't grate your knuckles. That would be the wrong thing to do. There we go. Now, what I'm using here is a pastry cutter. If you just have knives or forks, you don't have one of these, that works perfectly too. Just take 2 forks and you can do it. So what you want to do is basically mix everything together. And eventually, it'll look kind of like beach sand. The butter will get into all of the flour and salt and sugar, and it will look kind of pebbly. As you can see, it's doing that already. As you can see there, you can see how it's kind of pebbly, looks a little bit like slightly wet beach sand. That's perfect. All right, now we need our wet ingredients. So we're going to set that to the side for just a sec. Take out this bowl, and we need 2/3 of a cup of milk and 1 large egg. So we'll open our milk. 2/3 of a cup. And 1 large egg. See if we can do this without getting the shell in there. Perfect. We'll set that to the side. Then you take your whisk. Whisk everything together. Like I said, if you have a fork, you don't have a whisk on you, all you need is a fork. Now we are going to want to combine the wet ingredients, the dry ingredients, and our blueberries. We're going to want to do the blueberries first. We do not want to forget those. So we have 1 cup of blueberries. If you buy a pint of blueberries at the store, a cup is about half of that. So we'll pour those in. Let's see, we'll get our spatula. We'll mix everything together all nice. Now, we pour our butter in, or our milk and egg. And it'll sort of all come together eventually into a nice wet dough. As you can see there, it's getting even pebblier. You can see. So once you get everything sort of mixed, you have to finish it by hand, which we will do in just a sec. If it's too wet, you can add a little bit more flour. If it's too dry, you just gotta kind of work with it. Maybe you can add a tiny bit more milk. All right, so we're gonna set that to the side. We're gonna take our flour again. We're gonna flour our surface. As you can see, I have these cutting boards down. That makes cleanup easy. So you can just sort of pick these up, rinse them off, and you're good to go. And you're not wiping flour off your counter. So, set that down. Let's take our dough. You don't want to handle it too much because then it'll melt the butter, and you don't want to do that. So, you want it probably a nice disc shape. It's not going to be perfect. That's totally fine. There we go. So then the last thing you want to do, you can use a knife or a pizza cutter. I'm going to use a pizza cutter. It's more fun that way. And then you want to cut it just like you would a pizza. Cut it into 8 slices. They don't have to be perfect. All right. Now, everything is just about ready. So we grab our oven pan. You want to put parchment paper down. I ran out of parchment paper, so I am using aluminum foil as a backup. With cookies, you don't want to do that because they'll stick. These don't really stick quite as much, so it's not as big of a deal. And you want to arrange those 8 delicious looking scones on the tray, like so. And now we just have a couple more steps before they're going in there. So, we need 1 more egg, little bowl, crack the egg into the little bowl, set that to the side again. Take your whisk. I have a different whisk. It doesn't really matter. You can reuse the same one. You're going to use this for an egg wash. You're going to brush this onto your scones. And so when they're in the oven, they'll get nice and browned and delicious. All right, put that in the other bowl. So now I have a pastry brush. If you don't have a pastry brush, like I said, I have alternatives for everything. You can just use a paper towel, anything like that. So you'll take the brush, just brush it over the top, get the egg wash over the top of all of them first. And then after we get the tops, we'll want to get the sides. Just make sure everything gets nice and browned and delicious. And if you're using a paper towel, all you need to do, dip it in the egg wash and just sort of dab it all over your scones. All right, one last step before they go in the oven is, if you want to, you can do some regular sugar on top, but I have what's called Turbinado sugar. That's what gives it, if you buy a scone at a bakery or something like that, that's what gives it that nice crunch on top. They're big, giant sugar kernels. Don't put too much, just sprinkle some on top. Perfect. Set that to the side. All right, now we are going to go over to our oven. Let's rearrange those a little bit. Make sure they're all nice and separated. Like I said, if you're doing this at home, the oven is going to want to be 400 degrees. Ours is a little lower, as you'll see in the video. If you're using a big regular oven, 400 degrees. If you're using a small convection oven like this, 325. We'll add a little bit of time. Open it up. Pop those in. Close the door. Now, if you're doing this at a regular oven, you're going to want to do it for 20 minutes. It's a 20-minute bake. It's pretty easy. You don't need to touch them after they go in. If you're doing it in a small convection oven like this, I would give it maybe 12 to 15 minutes and then check on it. At 325 for 15 minutes worked perfectly the last time I tried this. So that's all you really need to do. All right, while that is baking, we have one more step to do to make these delicious once they come out. We are going to make our lemon icing. To do that, it's pretty easy. You just need 3/4 of a cup of powdered sugar and then as much lemon juice as you want to taste. I usually do a little bit more than you're supposed to. Same idea as the flour. Using a spoon just makes it not clump up. Although if you have too much sugar, not the end of the world. All right, set that down. 3/4 of a cup of powdered sugar. It will go everywhere. It's powdered sugar, don't worry about it. And lemon juice. We're just gonna put, that sounds good for now. We can look at it again later. Take your spoon or a whisk, doesn't really matter what. Just mix it all together. All right, it is time to take these out of the oven. They've been in there for about 13 or 14 minutes right now. Just checked, they look like they're good. You want to make sure you have an oven mitt or a rag. Very, very important. So we're going to open up the oven. Pull those out. Oof, those look delicious. See that? Molten blueberries. We're going to bring that over to our rack. All right, our scones are out of the oven. We have the icing ready. They've cooled down a little bit so the icing won't just melt immediately. Let's pick one. That one looks perfect. If they stick a little bit, you can just use a spatula to get them up. If you're using parchment paper, they shouldn't really stick anyways. All right, so to get a nice drizzle on it, take your spoon, hold it over the bowl, do a nice zigzag pattern on it. We want some more icing than that. Let's do a nice crosshatch. Boom, look at that. All right, so that is perfect, it's done. Thank you so much, I hope you had fun cooking along. I hope your scones are delicious. Thanks again to the Framingham Cultural Council. Without your help with that grant, we couldn't have done any of this. Thanks again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.